Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 134. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Thursday. Steelers Nation, the schedule's a little bit jumbled up this week, but Dave and I wanted to wait until after Wednesday to see the 2025 schedule released to know exactly the order in the games Pittsburgh is playing this season. That dropped late Wednesday, so we're doing the show today to react to that. Dave, how you doing?
Hey, good morning. Happy, Thursday to you. And I get kind of caught up annually in the schedule release, have my nice little grid in Excel and try to follow along and mark off all the supposed links or leaks that come out, and then try to do the process of elimination and go from there and try to beat the team, beat 8 o'clock Eastern time to actually have the full schedule intact. And this year, I think I accomplished that goal thanks mainly to all of the leaks, I guess, being right, and a little bit of final. You get to a point where there's only one box left in certain columns for certain weeks, so you put two and two together. And anyway, long story short, was able to have the full schedule together. I don't know, about 30 minutes, 45 minutes or so before the actual schedule release. And then obviously that dropped, and then Art Rooney's annual comments about the schedule come out, and then we get all the reaction videos, and ends up having a lot to we have a lot to write about. Then ultimately we have a lot to discuss about a list of opponents that we've known since the 2024 season ended. And I don't know, there's just something magical about putting them in order of the way you're going to play them, and the bye week, of course, and that fans always look forward to, and fans making travel plans. And the NFL is a machine, man. They're able to keep you in tune all season long during the off season, and yesterday was no different.
And let's dive right on in, Dave, with the 2025 schedule. Let's start with the preseason, briefly run through that. The first stadium game Pittsburgh will play in 2025 will come Saturday, August 9th at Jacksonville, followed by the one home preseason game Pittsburgh has of the three, hosting Tampa Bay Saturday, August 16th. And then shortly after that, we're back to the old finale against the Carolina Panthers, which I appreciate. Pittsburgh at Carolina Thursday, August 21st. That is the preseason slate. And then the regular season kicks off that first Sunday in September for the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road at the New York Jets, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So that is a really intriguing week one opener for Pittsburgh. Of course, the storylines are obvious to fill in. Justin Fields facing his former team, Aaron Rodgers, should he sign, facing his former team, Mike Tomlin, Aaron Glenn. Should be a good one, Dave.
Is this coincidence, or is this they knowing some pretty good storylines there and doing there's obviously, if you go to, I think, the NFL's Twitter feed, they have the schedule making process video up. I have yet to watch that. I don't know if it's a new version or an older version. I hope it's a newer version. But a lot obviously goes into it. It's a lot quicker process with computers and cloud and all like that than it used to be. But I don't know. I was silently hoping before the schedule got released that it would be Steelers and Jets for a lot of the reasons you just mentioned there. Obviously have Justin Fields for the Jets, and the speculation continues. The Steelers will have Aaron Rodgers, and then you had all the Aaron Rodgers talking a little bit about the final meeting that ended up being shorter than what he expected it to be with Aaron Glenn and the Jets, and it sounded like some animosity there, and it just makes you wonder how much effort went into elite. And look, there's 32 teams, and you got a lot of things to deal with, and a lot of good storylines along the way. It does make you kind of wonder if they were really trying and hoping to get the Steelers and Jets in week one.
This was not coincidence, Dave. This was, I think,
Okay.
certainly a concerted effort by the NFL, and under the assumption Rodgers will be there to have that kind of matchup. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident the NFL was able to intentionally place this game at the top.
Yeah, and as we just mentioned, the storylines, sort of write themselves within that because of the Rodgers and Fields angle more than anything, and you got a first year head coach in Aaron Glenn, and this is certainly a game I was hoping for, and obviously the Steelers on the road again. How many times out of the last 10 years or whatever that they're on the road, because they had the one home game a couple seasons ago against the 49ers, but even before that there was that string of, I forget, 7, 8 games that was on the road, and obviously the Pirates play into that. The Pirates are at home on that first Sunday of the NFL season, I believe, against the Brewers, so it was kind of easy to rule out that the Steelers would be home on Sunday or in Week 1 unless they had a Sunday night or a Monday night game, and I think that kind of got ruled out pretty quickly due to some of the leaks and all like that. So what was this? What's the streak of the last 10 or so openers?
Since 2015, Pittsburgh has been on the road week 1 every year except for the one you mentioned, 2023, against the 49ers, that blowout loss at home. So I forget the exact math on that, but since 2015, every year but one on the road, and this year continues that trend.
All right. So that once again, week 1, we'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers, but you have instant in play storylines there.
Pittsburgh's home opener will be week 2 hosting the Seattle Seahawks. So DK Metcalf will face his former team. That's one of the top headlines there. Pittsburgh also, depending on how much you believe the reports, made some sort of pseudo run at Sam Darnold this offseason, and he goes to Seattle. So hosting the Seahawks, and that'll be a good game, Dave.
Yeah, first game of the season at home, and really they have what? How many out of their because even though technically the game in London in week 4 is
Ireland.
or Ireland,
London, yeah.
I keep mixing the two. The game in Ireland is technically one of the Steelers. They're considered the host in that one, but not actually at Acrisure there. They Let's see, 2 of their first, 5 games are technically at home. So they will have to wait quite a while after this game against the Seahawks for their second home game at Acrisure there. And as you mentioned, you got the DK Metcalf storyline within that. And, the Seahawks are starting kind of anew again with a new quarterback in Sam Darnold. So, yeah, it's a couple of interesting matchups here to start off the season with the Jets and then the Seahawks at home.
That's a really good point, Dave, about the quirkiness of the home slate to start. So over the first 5 weeks, Pittsburgh will only play one game at Acrisure Stadium. As you said, week 4, they are technically the home team in Dublin, in Croke Park, but Minnesota will not be coming to Pittsburgh. They'll be traveling overseas. And Kevin O'Connell, not to get ahead of ourselves, but O'Connell said he's looking forward. He's glad that he does not have to go to Pittsburgh for that game. I don't know if Ireland's going to be friendly confines either. I believe it'll be predominantly Steelers fans out there rooting for Pittsburgh over Minnesota in that one. But it's interesting. I know the last time Pittsburgh only played one true home game over the first 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, we'll have to research that one out. I forgot to look at that last night after the schedule was released. So go ahead.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, Seattle should be a good home opener. Then Pittsburgh back on the road, week 3 at New England with the Mike Vrabel-led Patriots.
Yeah, and I think you got a little storyline in there with with Mike Vrabel switching teams. You got Drake May and his second NFL season, and the Patriots will be sort of rebuilt. And I think it's been a little while since they played. Seemed like every year they were playing the Patriots, but at Acrisure. Yeah, that sets up for another interesting top of the schedule game for the Steelers this year.
I just think about, what was that, 2019 at New England to start the season, and Pittsburgh gets blown out. So hopefully avoiding a repeat of that. Week 4 is the Ireland game in Dublin, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. And so, Dave, you'll be up at, what's that, a 6:30 kickoff you out there in Vegas? So that game will be over pretty early on your side of the domestic United States. But Go ahead, Dave. You want to say something?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, man, and I'll go into this a little bit deeper. I'm ecstatic with the way this schedule is this year for the Steelers, and I realize that a lot of people don't like the international games, and specifically the I guess it would be a 9:30 Eastern time start in the United States and all. But I'm up anyway. I generally get up with the chickens anyway, and I love nothing more than turning on the TV at 6:30 in the morning my time here in Vegas and watching football. And the good thing about it being a Steelers game early is we'll get to watch that early, get it all digested, and probably be able to enjoy the late afternoon games that week as well too. So yeah, I once again I understand a lot of people don't like the international games, that don't like the 9:30 Eastern time starts and all, but I love it. Sign me up for it. So interesting slate of 4 games, and obviously we've known that the Steelers will be in Ireland this year for some time, and we learned over the course of the last several days that they would be playing the Vikings over there, and in week 4 specifically. So sign me up.
Putting on our blogger hats, this was a pretty good schedule for our purposes in terms of not having a ton of primetime games, not having a crazy back end of the schedule with the 3 games in 11 days like last year. So I'll take it overall. But yeah, that Minnesota game, the first time Pittsburgh will play a 2024 playoff team. And so of that first quarter of the season, Jets, Seahawks, Patriots, and Vikings, I'm not big into predictions. You never know how a season will go. Some teams surprise, some teams disappoint, but Minnesota, of those 4, the toughest team by far.
And expected to have J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, right?
Right, that's a great question. Last year was Darnold leading the team. Now Pittsburgh will face him in Seattle week 2. Now it's McCarthy, and how he looks is anyone's guess.
Yeah, and the bye, after the game against the Vikings in Ireland, I think the general notion was that teams get requested whether or not they want to buy after international games, right? But what did Art Rooney have to say about that?
Sure, teams can request a buy or not a buy, and in this case, Art Rooney said the team did not ask for a buy after the international game. It is more common than not for teams to take and to have a buy after an international contest. Not always. The Jets didn't take their buy last year, but the NFL gave Pittsburgh a Week 5 bye. That was their choice, not Pittsburgh's doing, and that is the earliest bye Pittsburgh has had in a non-COVID year since 2013, the last time Pittsburgh went international following their London loss to Minnesota in 2013. So an early bye for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, and I think after we learned for sure that the game in Ireland would be in week 4, several people started wondering, would the bye be after that game for the Steelers in week 5? And as a fan base, you generally root for a middle of the season bye, and for the most part, it feels like the pushback from the fan base is they're not happy with the Steelers having an early bye this year. But it does seem like it's a byproduct of the team playing in Ireland in week 4, so they'll just have to deal with it. And coming out of the bye, though, they have their first divisional game.
They do. So Pittsburgh will not have to wait until week 11 to start AFC North play like last year. They'll face off against the Cleveland Browns, hosting them 1 p.m. week 6. That's followed by a back-to-back AFC North slate, a quick turnaround too at Cincinnati for the Thursday night game in week number 7.
Who's going to be the quarterback for the Browns in week 6? Hell, we don't even know who the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to be right now.
Also true. So no idea what it's going to look like for either side by then. Certainly no idea on Cleveland's end with the 4 quarterbacks there of Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. But it's it's an important slate there to go back-to-back games, AFC North, a quick turnaround to go hosting Cleveland, and then 4 days later going out to Cincinnati for that AFC North game. That's going to be a really important back-to-back stretch.
All right. Well, let's interrupt this by first going over to the set of quarterbacks the Steelers will open their 2025 season against. You got Justin Fields, you got Sam Darnold, you got Drake May, you got J.J. McCarthy, and you got to be determined with the Browns, more than likely going to be one of Flacco or Kenny Pickett. Correct me if I'm wrong. all those quarterbacks I just named were former first-round draft picks, right? Was Flacco was the first-round guy, wasn't he?
Yes. So yeah, that is correct. First rounders across the board.
Yeah, and Fields, Darnold, May, McCarthy, and likely one of Flacco or Pickett. How do you feel about the first technically 5 games through week 6?
And Pickett himself, a first round pick, should it be Kenny
Pickett.
Pickett that Pittsburgh is facing in that one. How do I feel? I'm not a big schedule release guy in terms of trying to have reactions. I mean, on paper, and it's always on paper, and things change so much. You know, how do things look in week 4? Heck, even by week 1 with training camp injuries and the like, you never know for sure. It is a more favorable schedule early in the season. It's not the most daunting names of quarterbacks. I thought, and I don't mean to derail the conversation if you were taking this a place quarterback wise, but I thought Louis Riddick made a good point about the aggressive defensive coordinators Pittsburgh will face in this one, or defensive
Ah,
minded head coaches. Aaron Glenn, he's aggressive. Mike McDonald from the Baltimore tree, he's aggressive. Mike Vrabel, they add Milton Williams. They're going to be pretty aggressive with whip. Everyone knows Brian Flores. No one blitzed more than Minnesota last year. So, you know, whoever's a quarterback, Rudolph or Rodgers, and for this O line, we talk about how important this offensive line, you know, is to develop this year. And I think the focus really should be on them more so than even quarterback in terms of how well does that group grow and develop. That group will be tested in that first four games for Pittsburgh.
yeah, that's a great point. I don't know. Maybe we'll write an article about that one, about the defensive side or the opposition's defensive look and how aggressive. That's a good point by you. Defensive minded teams to open up the season would be a good test by that alone for the Steelers offense.
They had the question on ESPN last night that if it is Mason Rudolph starting at quarterback, if Rodgers is not the guy for whatever reason, how many games is Pittsburgh of those first 5, we'll call it, to week 6 against the Browns? How many of those games does Pittsburgh have the advantage in quarterback wise?
Well, Dan Orlovsky came right out and said the Steelers could be staring 0-6 in the face in their first 6 if Mason Rudolph's the quarterback. I don't think I'd buy that. I think they would still manage to pull a couple out that way, but it would be daunting for just the reasons that you mentioned with the defensive minded coaching of those, let's say, first 5 teams, because we all know the Bengals, their strength's going to be on offense this year, and we'll see what we got. A little side story going on there with Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals right now and his contract and all. But that's a great point just overall about the defensive minded teams that they'll be playing with the quarterback going along with the quarterback situation.
Well, let's go through it quickly on quarterback. So Mason Rudolph or Justin Fields, who's the better quarterback of the two as of right now?
Mm.
You think it's close?
I do think it's close because of the sheer fact there's a stat rolling around about Justin Fields and the points put up in his starts.
But I mean, even factoring Fields as a runner, I mean, I'm including that element as
Okay,
just the
well,
quarterback, not just as pure passes, but just pure quarterbacks and all they offer.
Well, Fields definitely tilts it in his favor when it comes to that. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see enough of that in his one season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and maybe that's to some degree, something that could have been utilized more, or definitely could have been utilized more. So, yeah, I think push comes to shove in totality, I would probably give the edge to Fields.
Okay, I mean, from the pocket, Rudolph certainly can make some plays, but I just think about if I'm ranking the top 40 quarterbacks in the NFL. Chris Sims does that each year. Who would I rank first? And I'm pretty confident I'd probably end up putting Fields ahead of Mason Rudolph. Maybe the gap isn't huge. I don't know if Fields is 10 spots ahead of Rudolph. I'm not quite sure, but I would still put Fields ahead of Rudolph.
Okay, and then Darnold and Rudolph.
I'm going Darnold.
Yeah, I'd go Darnold as well too. What about Drake May and Rudolph?
Still going May.
That might be a push for me until I see a little bit more from Drake May.
Okay. And then McCarthy's a true wild card, just being sight unseen, missing his entire rookie season. So I can give the edge to Rudolph there until something is seen out of J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, we don't know anything about him at the NFL level right now, so he's going to have a lot to prove. So I would lean Rudolph there.
And then the Browns quartet of quarterbacks, I'll give Rudolph the nod.
I don't know, Joe. Don't play a lot of zone against Joe Flacco, right?
True, true.
I mean, if you don't do that, I'll give the edge to Rudolph.
And then even extending it out to that 6th game, though Orlovsky mentioned Joe Burrow, of course, would get the nod
Sure.
over Mason Rudolph.
Sure.
All right, so after the AFC North games, Week 6 and Week 7 against Cleveland and Cincinnati, Pittsburgh having their first Sunday night game, hosting the Packers in Week 8. And so one reason why this game is not in Ireland, I'm sure, is because the NFL wanted a primetime game for the hope and possibility of Aaron Rodgers facing his former team in the Green Bay Packers in a primetime slot.
And just to reiterate, that game against the Bengals in Cincinnati in Week 7 is a Thursday night game. Their first of 4 listed primetime games for the 2025 season. And obviously the second divisional game in a row coming off the bye after the Browns game. So, yeah, that one sets up, and then you get a little bit of a mini bye, if you will, as you prepare for at home against the Packers. And obviously, if Aaron Rodgers is on your team, you get Aaron Rodgers versus his original team and the Packers. You get Jordan Love. You get it at Acrisure at night on Sunday Night Football. So circle that one for sure.
Yeah, no question about that. And then Week 9, back-to-back home games for Pittsburgh, hosting the Colts 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, and who's the quarterback there now?
It's going to be a battle this summer of Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. Who wins it? It's hard to say.
Yeah. So right in the middle of the season, you get almost technically you get the Colts at home. So and then leading into a Sunday night game out in LA against the Chargers, which I believe Art Rooney II's not a huge fan of that being a night game.
Yeah, the West Coast night game, not Art Rooney's favorite, but that is the hand Pittsburgh's been dealt. And so that is 3 out of 4 games in a primetime slot. The Thursday night game in Week 7, Sunday night Week 8, and then Sunday night Week 10. So that'll be some late nights for the Depot crew and for the team themselves, of course.
Yeah, and I would imagine Art Rooney II's along with us. Why couldn't they have maybe spread out some of these primetime games here?
Yeah, it would have been nice. So that is one of the more difficult schedules kind of logistically, but at least for the Thursday night game, you get that mini bye on the other side, and then the Packers game is at home. The tough part is going out west to play that Sunday night game.
Yeah, and then whatever happens there in Week 10 out on the road, you come back home and you get another divisional game, the rematch against the Bengals at Acrisure.
Yeah, so you get Bengals in Week 7 and then Week 11. So that'll all be, that series for the season will be determined relatively early as far as AFC North games go.
All right.
Then Week 12 at Chicago to face Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and the Bears.
Yep. That will be interesting with the new head coaching staff and obviously Caleb in his second season.
What are your thoughts on Chicago? Do you think they're going to be a team truly on the rise this year? It really feels like they're building in the right direction. I thought they had a really strong offseason. They fortified the offensive line, adding guys like Joe Thuney and others, Dahlman at center, to really protect Caleb Williams.
I don't know. They play in a tough division overall there. I kind of view this a first-year head coach, a second-year quarterback, kind of more of a developmental year. Yes, on the rise, but my initial thoughts are this isn't a juggernaut yet.
Okay. I think, how Pittsburgh will handle the chess match with all that Ben Johnson can throw at you will be really, really interesting. A Tomlin defensive minded versus a Ben Johnson offensive mind. That'll be a lot of fun to watch.
All right.
And then Week 13, hosting the Buffalo Bills for a 4:25 game. Don't get a ton of those on the East Coast, but Pittsburgh will have the late afternoon time slot hosting the former MVP, last year's MVP, I should say, in Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, and I think 2 4:25 p.m. starts on the schedule for Sundays this year. With this, obviously, was there one early? When's the second late start?
The Lions, week 16.
Okay. All right. So this is the first of the two later starts on a Sunday here. And look, the Bills need what does Mike Tomlin say? It needs
Need no endorsement from me.
need no endorsement from me. Josh Allen speaks volumes alone when it comes to the Bills. So that will be a tough game at Acrisure in week 13 against the Bills.
Speaking of the first of two, the first Baltimore Ravens game does not appear on the schedule until week 14, going to Baltimore for a 1 p.m. tilt. So Pittsburgh, spoiler alert, the two Baltimore games, week 14 and week 18. So the NFL putting those things late in the season to potentially maximize their importance.
Yeah, and this is tough, and we'll highlight this here at the end. This is a tough end of the season gauntlet, if you will, for the Steelers, and really even begins, I would say, probably in week 10 with the Chargers on Sunday Night Football, and then the Bengals, and then the Bears, the Bills, the Ravens, and then what's after the Ravens in week 14.
It is hosting the Miami Dolphins for the one Monday night game Pittsburgh has slated for. So week 15 hosting Miami on Monday night.
Yeah, and then you turn around on a short week and you have to go out to Detroit in week 16 and take on the Lions.
Yeah, that's the doubly difficult part. Not only playing at Detroit was just tough no matter what in a vacuum, but then the short week going on the road is going to make that even more difficult. 4:30 p.m. Eastern time game, week 16 against Dan Campbell and those biting kneecap Detroit Lions.
Yeah, and then you have to lick your wounds kind of quickly and get ready for your final two games of the season against AFC North foes.
Week 17 at Cleveland, then week 18 hosting the Ravens. The Browns games at 1 p.m. Eastern time. The Ravens time to be determined, as is the case for all teams in week number 18. So 3 of your last 5 games are against the AFC North. The other 2 are hosting Miami Monday night and then traveling to Detroit. You have Buffalo in week 13. So just to run down that list, week 13 and on the final 6 games, hosting Buffalo, at Baltimore, hosting Miami, at Detroit, at Cleveland, then hosting Baltimore. That is a much tougher end of the schedule on paper than the beginning of the schedule is. No question about that, Dave.
Yeah, and can't we about rubber stamp what we said about a year ago this time? Feels like the Steelers need to make hay in the first half of their schedule and then do what they can in the second half of this schedule and hopefully be because those last 6 games, I don't know how daunting you would match that up to last season, because last season you had how many AFC North games in the final 6, was it?
Well, you had all of them from week 11 on. That was your entire AFC North slate. So
and then you had the Eagles and the Chiefs mixed in there last year. So once again, this sets up at least on paper, and we all know how things can change as the season goes on, but it certainly feels like the Steelers better make some hay in the first, let's say 5 games, I would say, through the Browns game in week 6. Better make some hay in the early part of the season here.
I agree, but Pittsburgh made their hay last year to be 10-3, and that hay went to hell in a handbasket with the 5-game losing streak. So it doesn't really matter what you do. You can have a really good start to the season if you drop games the way Pittsburgh dropped games last year in a very competitive AFC North, where I think the Bengals will be better. Not going to have quite the slow start as last year, and a very competitive AFC overall. You're going to be, barbecue chicken no matter how that start to the season goes. I will say, I don't think the end of the schedule is quite as daunting as last year, in large part because you're not doing the 3 games in 11 days, which I think was the real killer. And I know Pittsburgh's opponents had to do similar, and it's no excuse, but whenever you're in a losing streak and you can't practice, and there were some injuries, and then you're facing elite teams like the Chiefs, like the Eagles, etc., it just really kind of compounded upon itself. So you do have the short schedule from week 15 to week 16, Miami Monday night, and then going to Detroit, but you don't have the Thursday night game, you don't have the Saturday game, the Christmas Day game, you don't have all that kind of just complete mess that you had last year. And I don't think the opponents are maybe quite as difficult either. Miami, Cleveland are going to be more winnable games than what that slate looked like last year. Of course, you still have tough games in Buffalo and Baltimore, in Detroit, but if you want to, maybe I'm being a little spin cycle here, but I don't think it's quite as bad as last year.
All right. But you do have the two obviously against the Ravens within those games, and Detroit obviously not going to be any. Who are the Dolphins going to be in 2025?
It's a great question. Is Tua healthy? How does that group look? It feels like a big year for Tua down there in Miami.
All right. The odds makers, at least early, according to DraftKings, don't not looking too terribly favorable as far as the Steelers' opponents and schedule goes in 2025. I believe they are favored in their first two games against the Jets and the Seahawks. Then they're not favored in their next two against the Patriots and the Vikings. They're favored against the Browns in week 6, and I believe again in week 17. And in what's the week 15 game? Is that the
Miami.
Dolphins? They're favored there. So the Steelers are, at least early in this process, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Steelers are favored in only 6 of their 17 games, with 2 of those being against the Browns and 2 being to start the season. And who is the other ones? Miami they're favored against, and who's the other one in the middle of the season? The Colts.
Okay, they're dogs to the Bears in week 12.
Yes, they are 2.5-point dogs to the Bears.
Yikes! Now none of this really matters because these
Right.
lines will change a million different ways by week 12. But yeah, the odds makers not loving the Steelers season, but the odds makers always seem to under undervalue, looking for the right word here, Pittsburgh's season with all these 8-win, over under win totals, and Pittsburgh always seems to surpass that a little bit. So take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the odds on DraftKings as far as over under, it's roughly around 8.5. I think is where you're probably going to find it right now for the Steelers. Now, look, the Steelers still don't know who their quarterback's going to be, even though we still believe, I think both of us, that it will end up being Aaron Rodgers. But what if it's not? 8, I think that's probably the reason why this thing's hovering around 8.5 win total right now for the Steelers.
I mean, it is, but it's literally always around 8.5. Like every single year for the past 4 seasons has been around that. And Pittsburgh has beaten the over-under odds every single season. So to me, this is just pretty rubber stamping that total for Pittsburgh and for Mike Tomlin.
All right. Any kind of overarching thoughts here, I guess, on the schedule? We covered the early run of quarterbacks there. We covered the defensive mindedness of the teams they'll face, at least in those first five or so games. We touched on the back half of the schedule. What else? What about the travel out to Ireland this year that Art Rooney II talked about?
Yeah, let's get to some Art Rooney's comments. As is tradition, Art Rooney has a sit-down interview that gets released right after the schedule comes out to talk about his thoughts on the schedule, any special events for the season. We'll talk about that in a moment. But for the Ireland game, Rooney says, quote, "I think we're planning to leave similar to what we did for the last international trip in London, probably leave on Thursday and practice there on Friday and Saturday and have the game on Sunday and fly out Sunday night. I don't think it'll be too much different from the last trip." And quote, Rooney did say he will still consult with whoever he wants to consult with to maybe make any alterations there, and probably should consider that because the players really panned Pittsburgh's travel itinerary for that London game. I know Ben has talked about it several times, how tired the team was. They got in too late. There was too much jet lag. There were coaches sleeping during meetings, right before the game because everyone was just exhausted from getting in too late. And so probably something the team and Rooney should be reconsidering to not have the same fate as that London game in 2013 where Pittsburgh got down big early to Minnesota, tried to have a furious comeback and fell short.
I didn't have a chance to research this last night. Do you remember when they arrived last year? Or not last year, the last time they played Minnesota in England, what day it was? I remember there being a lot of pushback about I think Minnesota had gotten there a day and a half or something earlier or something like that. Do you remember exactly how that fell? Have you researched that yet?
Well, I'm reading the article he wrote about it from who wrote this. This was Matthew Marksey, and he says that Cam Hayward talked about it one time and noted they left on Thursday night, practice first thing on Friday. So with Rooney's saying the same schedule as last time, he'd be leaving Thursday and then practicing early Friday.
How about leaving on Wednesday?
Yeah, there's different thoughts. Some teams want to get there. Some teams even want to leave like really early in the week to have a full week over there, essentially, to really adjust to the time zone and not have any jet lag effects. And so wouldn't be too mad about leaving earlier. I'm with you, Dave.
All right. So
What is the game before? It's well, they're at New England. I mean, they'll get home obviously that Sunday.
right.
Something like it's not some kind of crazy trip they're making before then. Yeah, I mean, you hear the warning signs from players, past and present, about that trip, and it's a little concerning to hear Rooney say, "Let's do it again."
Yeah, especially the way the pushback was last time. So I don't know. They got a lot of time to figure out the full itinerary, and maybe he'll just default to whatever Tomlin wants to do on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's an operations team that coordinates these things, and so I don't know how much input they have on exactly when they leave. So who do you think makes final call on who when they leave? Is it Tomlin thing? Is it operations team just suggesting it? How do you think that works?
I don't know. I would defer to Tomlin on this because he's done it before
Yeah.
too, and so seen what has happened. If Mike Tomlin wanted to leave New England and fly out there, if that's what he wanted to do, that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, that's a good question. Has Minnesota done any? They've done international games since 2013, right? I wonder what their schedules have looked like in terms of when they've left, and maybe anything recently under the current regime to see when Minnesota is left for their international
Yeah,
slates.
that's something else to kind of go down the rabbit hole on.
And they're a pretty forward-thinking organization, right? With isn't their GM Ivy League guy and Kevin O'Connell, young buck. So they probably have some analytics about when is the optimal time. We've got to leave at 8:31 a.m. on Wednesday and fly there, and we'll be good to go. So interesting to see the two approaches there for Minnesota and Pittsburgh.
Are you surprised with supposedly a rookie quarterback and uh, you know that the Vikings are early favorites for that game, especially with what figures is set up with a obviously a pro Steelers crowd
Mhm.
and all like that.
I mean, Minnesota won 14 games last year, granted not with McCarthy at quarterback. I really put no stock into lines here in May for a game in a week 4, but just knowing that Minnesota, what the strength of that team was last year, I guess I'm not really shocked. What is the line on that game anyway? How heavily favored is Minnesota in that one?
What did I say? A point and a half or something on that? Let me pull it
Okay.
back up here. I don't have it back in front of me. I
So
know it
not
wasn't a lot.
yeah, if it's a pretty close line, I may be a little surprised. I just really have no reaction overall to, you know, lines and spreads for these things that won't take place for 4 months.
Okay, let me see if I've got it pulled back up here. I have Vikings 1.5 point favorites right now.
Okay, so we shall see if that line moves by week 4. I imagine it'll move in some direction for some reason, either on field, off field, whatever the case is, by the time week 4 rolls around. What else did Art Rooney have to say? The week 8 game against Green Bay will feature some new throwback jerseys. Dave, Art Rooney says they'll have a new look, and this kind of came off some reporting, I believe earlier this month or late April, that Pittsburgh would have some gold helmets this year. So does that kind of suggest the direction in which they'll go and unveil some new throwback looks?
Do we know for a fact that it's the gold helmet, though? I know that we know that it's going to be a different helmet, but do we know for sure it's going to be the gold one?
I have to go back and check the initial report. It was either strongly believed or reported to be the gold helmet. For whatever it's worth, and this is me putting a tinfoil hat on and probably just connecting dots that aren't actually there. Do you have the Steelers app on your phone, Dave, by chance?
I do. Yes.
Mine updated very recently to now have a gold background on the Steelers logo on the app. I don't know if yours did either. It used to just be the Steelers logo, which is still there, and now it's encircled by a gold background. Has yours done that by chance?
I don't know if I've noticed the difference.
No. Yeah. Okay. Well, if anyone has checked their phone, mine at least recently has changed. Does that mean anything that they're switching to a gold? It probably doesn't, but either way, we have some new throwbacks for this game. You suggested What did you suggest? What did they
Oh,
call
I
him?
like the
The
old bat.
Batman?
Yeah, the old Batman. I would love to see those with kind of that gold cowl, if you will, around the shoulder pads from the late '60s. That's kind of what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, because they've won a couple throwbacks, so I don't know how many other options are really left. I'm sure there's a couple, but that'll be interesting and one treat midseason.
Well, you've got one that you're hoping that it is, right?
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be a new throwback because they've worn them before, but they wore the 1933 jerseys for a game against the Colts in '94. They are hideous objectively, but I love them for the pageantry, the history, and honoring the first ever Steelers team, which were then called the Pittsburgh Pirates, by the way, until 1940. But that would be my choice. I don't think I'll get my wish for that one. I don't think Art Rooney wants a team to look like that for a primetime matchup.
Well, outside of them doing all whites, which I don't think they would do for a home game against Green Bay, there's not many there are not many options there if it's going to be a kind of a new throwback.
I still believe it will be with a gold helmet. So what did they wore those things until like 1960 or so. So probably one of those color schemes is where you're looking at it.
I mean, you're talking about the full kind of black and the gold sort of somewhat similar to the throwbacks, right? I mean, the color rush, right? The year that they wore those gold ones.
I think it'll be. I don't know. I mean, it could be the whites. I mean, I just pulled up an old photo of Bobby Lane, like that era Steelers. Late '50s, early '60s, with yellow on the arms, the white jerseys overall with the gold helmets. I think that'd be pretty cool.
But I mean, all white. It'd be really weird to see them wear all white on at home.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but it's throwbacks. It's going to be weird to see anything different. I mean, the Packers. What would the Packers be wearing? Would they be in their? I don't know. I don't know my jersey color schemes.
Yeah, I
But you
would
have to think about.
imagine that they would be in white.
Yeah, so you have to be careful that you're not overlapping color schemes. But anyway, I'll leave that for other people who follow the jersey stuff more than I do.
And I think he hinted that that would be announced in July, correct?
I believe so. Yeah, I don't know exactly when. I know they'll announce the Hall of Honor class in training camp, which is either going to be in very late July or early August, and so I will probably get that. I assume before training camp on the throwback jersey to kind of give us a little dead of the off season news to talk about.
All right, we'll look forward to that. What else did Art Rooney have to say about everything?
I think that was basically it. Am I missing anything else big from Rooney? I could be. It was a mad scramble with all the information that came in last night around schedule release time.
I think he was just generally happy with the way the AFC North schedule fell, and obviously he talked about how all of them were grouped together last year during the second half of this season. We already covered that. Not a big fan of having to go out west and play that night game against the Chargers. Trying to think if there's anything else. We talked about how they weren't necessarily asked about the bye week after the game in Ireland. Did we hit everything? I think we did, didn't we?
I think so. The only thing we haven't hit is the Steelers social media team, the schedule release video, which was the theme was what? Sacking Sasquatch with Nick Herbig and Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward playing the role as the Squatch. Did you watch the video? Your thoughts, if you have any, Dave?
Yeah, good effort, good try. Still pales in comparison to some of the other ones that are out there.
Yeah, this video, listen, I'm no social media expert, and I know these things can be difficult, and everyone worked hard on the video. I thought Herbig and Benton maybe stick to their
Acted
day
well.
jobs. Yeah, let's stick to their day jobs as rushing the passer. But it's fun to see those guys. They're BFFs and have been for a long time. So it's probably the right pairing for that video. It just I don't like the videos that they don't tell you the schedule until the end. I don't want to watch a 5-minute video to then see the schedule at the end. I just think that's waiting too long, and the video itself just felt a little too slow, a little too all over the place, and just kind of too random for me. So not my favorite attempt, but that I won't quit my day job either because I'm probably not one to criticize the social media team.
Well, you're definitely good at your day job. I thought the Titans Skedreezy was. Did you watch that one?
I haven't. I saw it's like a mock prescription drug commercial, but I have not watched it yet. It's good.
Yeah, it's entertaining. It's cute. The Browns one was atrocious.
It was weird.
Yeah, I don't watch that. What's that show, that weird show on Netflix or the, uh,
I'm
oh,
not even sure the cultural reference. Was it a Stranger Things
yeah,
reference?
yeah.
Was it? Okay.
I've seen people kind of maybe refer to that. Anyway, it was lame, and they messed with the terrible towel in that one. The Chargers obviously did a good job and got a post out of us for theirs.
Yeah, they had some jabs, playful jabs, all in good fun at each team, including Pittsburgh for being a 9-8, team that's just kind of stuck. So there were some fun Easter eggs, even an Aaron Rodgers Easter egg in that one, which I didn't realize until I watched it back a little bit later that night. You can see Rodgers in one of the final scenes there. My favorite was the Falcons, which was a kind of similar theme. They did a Mario Kart parody, and it was really good with like the Chargers, a bunch of Easter eggs and hidden things. There's a great Belichick and his girlfriend little Easter egg in there, and so that one was really fun.
I did not watch that one. I'll have to watch that one. I did see before they took it down the Colts one. What did you find the full version of that? There was a lot of what people wonder if they pulled it down because they had Tyreek Hill uh so I guess sort of getting
Stopped,
stopped by the
arrested.
Coast Guard in that one, and throughout that video too they had John Rocker uh, fighting Patrick Mahomes Sr. In
Mm,
in that one, and I think there was something else in there that was I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they pulled that down. I think within the first hour of that one being up. So I didn't make the rounds to a lot of them. I'll get around to that today to these schedule release ones. But I did think the Chargers one was good. I thought the Titans one was good.
yeah, there were some people who did not clear that video on the Colts end of things, and they actually had a statement today apologizing, and it does not sound like they had licensing rights from Minecraft either. They did a Minecraft theme, which was pretty popular this year. The Chargers did that as well. Apparently, the Jets did too, and then pivoted last second. So they apologized to Tyreek Hill and to Minecraft, and so never a good sign when you have to apologize for your schedule release video.
The Jets one was interesting because you keep zooming in.
Hmm.
That was
That was cool.
yeah, that was uniquely done. How you can have all the man that was it was just interesting the way they did that. How you're able to keep zooming into other pictures and all like that. So I thought that was at least an interesting take on it.
All right, Dave, anything else? Any other schedule reactions? To me, I'm not a big schedule release guy. We know the teams. I get the order. I look at it just from the almost a player standpoint of, okay, when's the bye week? Are there any holiday games? No holiday games this year,
Right.
which is nice. I'm not a big fan of having to tell my mom, sorry, mom, can't see you for Christmas this year. I got to write about the Steelers. So I'm okay with the schedule. I know the end of the season is tougher, but who knows how the NFL will look like by the end of the year. I'm okay with everything.
Look, you still got to play the same teams that we knew they were going to be playing coming out of the 2024 season. But when you put them together in order, that's what captivates, I guess, all of us. One note that I have in here is that the Steelers will only play one team coming off their bye week in 2025. However, that will be Cincinnati. In Cincinnati has a week 10 bye, and then they play at the Steelers in week 11. So I believe wasn't it Washington that plays like 4 or 5 teams coming off the bye or something like that this year. So the Steelers only have to play one team coming off their bye week this year.
And that kind of parlays into a point that, and I don't, people do a great job analyzing the schedule in terms of rest days and bye weeks and the things you're mentioning. Friend of the show who covers Baltimore, Ken McCusick, sent me a message last night, and I don't really understand. I don't follow these things super well, so maybe those who do will take this more than I was able to. But he told me last night, quote, "This is the first time I've ever seen this happen, but the Steelers did not have a single positive scoring element in terms of timing fairness. They have the toughest AFC North schedule by a mile." And so that was Ken's interpretation of the schedule. I assume timing fairness means referring to things like rest days, you and your opponent, and bye weeks and the like there. So from his more analytical view, the schedule did not break favorably for Pittsburgh.
Wow, I have not heard that metric before. It'd be interesting to dive into that one a little bit more. Maybe Warren Sharp will go into that. Have you seen any at least breakdown of that, how it ranks for the teams? Or is that
Well,
just something he just DM'd you off the cuff?
yeah, this was a DM from Ken. I don't know exactly how he defines the whole criteria. Sharp had a post, though, essentially saying the end of the schedule is by far the toughest for Pittsburgh compared to anyone else, and it's not even close from the next toughest schedule to Pittsburgh's. And so, again, Week 13, Buffalo, Week 14 at Baltimore, Miami at Detroit, at Cleveland, and then hosting Baltimore in Week number 18. No question, a difficult slate.
And he calls that even tougher than last year's, right?
Oh, did he? I didn't even notice he. You think it's tougher? Do you personally think it's tougher? I know he's looking at it
I mean,
metrically.
I'm just mentioning what he's mentioning
Yeah.
here, but I mean, just taken for what he's his stats and all what he has on it.
I'm just asking you your personal opinion. Do you think it's tougher than last year's end of the
Uh,
schedule?
no, but it's close.
Yeah, I'm with you overall. So that is the schedule. Any other final thoughts here, Dave?
Let me see if I can pull up that Warren Sharp tweet real quick.
Yeah, we wrote about it this morning. I forget the exact verbiage of it. Will this be the last time we have just the one bye week schedule? Pittsburgh, will the NFL push to 18 games maybe next year, which I assume will come with 2 bye weeks?
Good question there.
Had that thought in my head last night.
I'm trying to find the Steelers post I can't find it here.
All right. Well, either way, Warren Sharp said the end of the
We
schedule
wrote about
is
it.
tough.
It's on the site. So if anybody wants to dive deeper into that, maybe we'll have it pulled up for the next show here.
All right, Dave. Any other news here? Apparently, the NFL is going to discuss a resolution next week to essentially allow players to play in the 2028 Olympics in the flag football competition. And so that will probably pass. I assume the NFL has been expanding flag football for local communities. It's in the Olympics. And so could we see some Steelers playing flag football in 2028?
I would imagine probably Minka might want to at least try that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know how those select teams, and that's 3 years from now. We'll see where Minka's at. He's going to be in his 30s by then. Will they look at younger players? That's all things down the road, but interesting to note.
All right. What else do we have to talk about this morning?
I think that's basically it. We can hit on just briefly some AFC North things we haven't discussed recently. I know this kind of feels like old news at this point, but the Ravens officially released Justin Tucker. Was that last week? The days all run together. But earlier this month, Tucker officially released the Ravens drafting a kicker, Tyler Loop, and the Ravens framed this as a football decision, and Tucker was coming off his worst season by far of his career last year, but this is, Dave, clearly so much more than just a football decision.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And going to be interesting to see if he lands anywhere at this point. And there's all the talk about how will this end up maybe impacting. And look, we covered this. Someone we got an email from somebody about a Hall of Fame, and I think Chris Boswell and all. It's hard enough for kickers to get in as it is. There's only just a handful of kickers in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, so definitely not the way that you want to go out if you're Justin Tucker. Based on the majority of his career.
Does Tucker ever kick again in the NFL?
Never's a long time, but it might be a while. I don't know, teams when they get the pitch,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say yeah, he does.
I'll say yes too. Deshaun Watson played quarterback again, played it poorly. I know Tucker's in a different circumstance, older, coming off a bad season. Not for a while though, as you said, till these investigations get wrapped up by the NFL.
All right.
And the Bengals are having an interesting time over there, Dave. Maybe you can shed some light on this. They held either the rookie minicamp or OTAs. I don't know exactly what phase they're in right now, but their top draft picks have not practiced. Shamar Stewart, Demetrius Knight have sat out. They have not signed their contracts yet, but they also did not sign the injury waiver that teams will give to players who have not signed their contracts. So, for example, in Pittsburgh during rookie minicamp, Derek Carmen practiced but is not under contract officially, but there's a waiver given that protects them should there be some sort of catastrophic injury. To allow them to feel comfortable to practice, and the Bengals players and Stewart and Knight are saying no, we're not gonna do that.
Well, I tell you, he's going to be dug in. I think he mentioned something along the lines that didn't enjoy some sort of text conversation. I think with Zach Taylor already kind of mentioning potential fines if he sits out. I guess mandatory minicamp and training camp, and Hendrickson saying, "Look, my track record speaks for itself." And I'll put it to you this way: he has not been a happy camper, and he's going to remain not a happy camper until they get something done, if anything, with him. I would expect him to try to test their fine theory, especially during mandatory minicamp. He might show up at training camp, but they're not going to get much out of him. And I mean, I know he's a little bit older in age, but I mean, this was what, the NFL sack leader last year. Their defense has already got questions with him. Mike Brown better take a hard look at that.
And he became the sack leader because of that finality against Pittsburgh, right? Didn't he have 2-3 sacks in that game, whipping Dan Moore off the edge? He had 3.5 sacks in that game to give him 17.5 for the season. So a lot of trade rumors about Trey Hendrickson. So yeah, it's been interesting. Like I mentioned with Stewart and Knight, so the rookies, they'll practice, they'll sign. That's really less of a story. It's a little interesting. But the Hendrickson situation, as you noted, is a really not unique, but interesting one to watch that I don't know how that's going to get resolved. I have to think they're going to get a deal done at some point, because what other option is there? A trade just seems less likely at this junction. But when that happens, how it happens, who's to say?
Definitely something to watch, especially with that being an AFC North team, and the Bengals specifically, with even the questions that they have on the defense with him.
All right, Dave, any final thoughts, any other late news or anything that we're missing that we have not talked about since our last show Monday? We're not going to do a show tomorrow, right? Is that the plan?
Unless some sort of news breaks, I guess, with Aaron Rodgers or whatnot, there's not going to, I say there's not. Things always pop up, but I think tentatively we're going to take Friday off like we did on Wednesday there, because there's just not a lot to talk about. Why don't we plan on not having a show unless something breaks on in the meantime on Friday, and then that'll give us time to watch a little bit more film on some of these draft picks at the bottom end of the draft class, and maybe we'll get a little bit more into talking more about some of these players. And obviously we'll look forward to, there's no OTAs at the end of this week, and the Steelers OTAs, I believe, will officially start at the end of next week, right?
May 27th is the first date of OTAs.
Okay, so we got a little while.
Yeah, whatever day on the calendar that is. Aaron Rodgers, I know we're all guessing. Nobody knows. Even the national media is essentially just saying, yeah, we don't know. I think Tom Pelissero said, yeah, he'll show up sometime between like June and July, which is just a vague timeline. But with OTAs beginning, they're voluntary. Do you think that's a soft deadline for Rodgers? How notable is it if he isn't there by then? Do you think now that we're post-schedule, even though we both believe the schedule release had nothing to do with Rodgers' timeline and decision, are we entering something could happen territory? Where do you think we're at with Rodgers?
I don't know. At this point, I'm over it all now when it comes to try to predict and guess all this. And wasn't there some beat reporter that came out and said the Steelers aren't too concerned about OTAs and Rodgers?
Somebody said that. Was that James Palmer? I forget who said that. I don't think it was a local guy. Should they be concerned? Is it a problem if Rodgers does not attend the voluntary OTAs?
I've said this time and time again. It's better to have them than not have them. I think I speak for everybody listening where you'd like to have them for OTAs, and I realize it's only 6 practices at the very minimum, man. Having them for mandatory minicamp. For sure.
Do you think that's, to put tinfoil hat on, do you think that's why they went to 6 practices, or some sort of, we'll make it less important for Rodgers to be there because we're only doing 6 instead of the usual, 9 or 10 they do?
I don't know. It seems like a couple other teams around the league have gone to some shorter ones as well. I wish Mike Tomlin would have been asked this last week during the one rookie minicamp session. Is there a particular reason why you only have 6 OTA practices this year?
I mean, he'll probably get asked during one of the OTA sessions, I would hope, but we shall see. I really would like him to be there. That's the deadline that I've set, was May 27th, to show that you do want to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What a novel concept, but will it happen? We'll see.
Let's see. Still waiting on these undrafted free agent signing bonuses. I don't have them as hitting just yet, and we do have the draft pick contracts and all, and those were slotted and easy to kind of figure out there. So still waiting on the undrafted free agents, and obviously that's not going to be a lot of money. But before I do my next salary cap update, I want to have those in hand, and then after that, I'm going to do a look at the Steelers' cash situation. And look, even if it's not Aaron Rodgers, this team's still going to have to spend. So, and I've mentioned this several times. This team's still going to have to figure out a way to spend some level of cash this offseason.
Yeah. Now, on who is an interesting question. We can talk about that more, I'm sure, throughout the offseason. Can I give you just one completely random thought, since we're not going to do the show Friday, and this has nothing to do with really Pittsburgh, but it's just a thought in my head, a prediction I'll make. John Gruden will be a head coach in the NFL in 2026.
Man, things sure have ramped up around him this offseason, hasn't it? He's doing all
Mhm.
these unboxings. He's back in the limelight with these quarterback camps. I believe, was it the Buccaneers had him do
Yep.
schedule release thing. He seems to be back in favor again. He seems to be willing and wanting to get back in those circles. So after the 2025 season, yeah, I believe there's a strong chance we could see John Gruden back in a head coach spot.
And that's what I'm seeing too. It feels like a soft launch of Gruden getting back in the NFL from the email scandal. And I regardless of whatever you think of that, whether he was a scapegoat or fairly handled, he's done some consulting work with teams. That was kind of the first step. Was he with maybe the Chiefs or the Saints on the side, kind of a quiet hush hush thing for a little bit? Now he's back in the media side of things with Barstool, had his YouTube channel for a little bit as well. And now, as you said, being part of the Buccaneers schedule release, it just feels like he's slowly getting worked back into the comfort where, okay, Gruden's in the NFL. It's not really a story anymore. And so I know he's not yet to get a head coaching interview, but I have to imagine he's going to get something here pretty soon for the next year's cycle.
What if things go wrong and let's say Miami again in 2025? Could that be a potential landing spot? Cleveland. What if Cleveland, uh, Stefanski, they're about ready for him to win there. Who else potentially?
Well, heck, let me give you this one. What if Todd Bowles has another underwhelming season? He's kind of been on not a hot seat, but his job status has been questioned a time or two.
They did win the division last year, though, right? Tampa
Well,
Bay.
they keep winning the division, but they can't kind of get. They're a little Pittsburgh like, but they're winning the division in terms of getting over the hump. But could he go back to Tampa Bay? I mean, that's probably one of the less likely of the ones you mentioned. But yeah, what if he ends up in Cleveland? You're right. What if Stefanski and Barry, that regime gets cleaned out, which would not be a surprise with another poor season? Could Gruden end up in Cleveland?
What about the Giants?
Yeah, for sure. Dable, you talk about, is there anyone on the hot seat more than Brian Dable? And I'm not one to really overanalyze a schedule, but the start of the Giants season is brutal, isn't it, Dave? They have maybe the hardest start of the schedule of any NFL team this year. What does their schedule look like to begin? I forget what it is, but I just saw.
They let's see. The Giants open up against the Commanders. The two divisional games in the Commanders and the Cowboys, and then they get the Chiefs and the Chargers. So their first four, and then they get the Eagles in week 6. So yeah, that's they got a tough start of the schedule there.
Yeah, so for Russell Wilson and that comp pick Pittsburgh's looking for, not a great start for him. And if they're tanking, not if they're tanking, but if they're losing and struggling, will they pull the ripcord on Russell Wilson early on? Things to consider.
Yep, absolutely. All right, good point by you to maybe look for Gruden sighting next year.
All right, Dave, let's get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, we'll start one with Larry Griffith says, is this finally the year that Connor Hayward gets bumped off the 53? He only offers running back, pass catching, and special teams, which Gainwell and draft picks supply. If his last name was Kozora, he wouldn't have made the 53. Wasted spot. Larry in Cary, North Carolina. Yeah, if his last name was Kozora, he'd probably be gone by now.
He would have never gotten there. He'd be
Yeah.
5'6", and the gene pool for the Kozoras are not NFL friendly.
Uh, Look, it's a fair question, for sure. There's two things that I think that you can kind of hang your hat on Connor Hayward. That is his pass catching ability, which obviously isn't utilized nearly enough, and his special teams play. Outside of that, depending on how the bottom of the tight end, we've mentioned a couple of these undrafted free agents we're keeping our eye on that are tight end / fullback and blocking capable here. And if those guys can do anything on special teams, and I believe we kind of got a series going on the site this offseason about kind of guys that are in jeopardy, and I think you firmly have to put Connor Hayward in that list of players. So yeah, it is a distinct possibility that Connor Hayward might need a little help when it comes to the 53.
Yeah, he's no guarantee. In my way too early 53-man roster I made post-draft, I had Connor Hayward off of it when you're facing competition from a DJ Thomas Jones, who could be more of a traditional fullback type. You have Donald Parham, who's that big, oversized wide receiver at tight end. Galbraith is an athletic move tight end, a rookie. Hayward's path, as you said, is special teams. That is going to be the thing that's going to give him the best chance to stick. He did have some decent cut blocks last year, too, in those split zone actions, but I think you can find somebody else who can probably offer you similar there. And you're right, he's a capable receiver in theory, but he had 4 receptions last year. It just and when Freiermuth and Washington were healthy, which they were, just wasn't a role for Hayward. So he'll be in. I don't know what's going to happen. These guys that are unknowns will have to step up and take the job. Thomas Jones, a Galbraith, a Parham, in Pittsburgh's standpoint, but certainly there is no guarantee Hayward will make the team. He will have to earn his job, no question.
I will not be writing his name in pen, nor should anybody else, at least as we sit here right now.
Agreed.
Let's see. Richard Jameson, I think this is more procedural to the site. Says a terrible take episode was posted twice on May 13th and no terrible podcast for Wednesday. He says, I hope that Dave Bryan has not had a health setback. No, I'm fine, Richard. I appreciate the email, and I appreciate. Look, anytime you see something maybe wrong with the site or whatnot, or you see an episode double posted or whatnot, yeah, absolutely reach out to us and let us know via email. We did have, I think, one of the terrible takes that got double posted, and thanks to Richard, we got that taken care of. And the reason we put it out on Twitter Wednesday morning, but a lot of people probably don't follow on Twitter to know that we put off the Wednesday terrible podcast until this morning. But appreciate you watching, Richard, because we do make mistakes from time to time here. This one from Randy in North Carolina. Loving the offseason covers, and Yins have been doing a great job. This is about Will Howard. Been digesting all things Will Howard in order to understand him as a prospect. His interviews with Big Ben and John Gruden also gave good insight into his history and process work ethic. He certainly has a mindset of an NFL quarterback and has experienced valuable highs and lows in his career. Overcame a junior high school injury that hurt his recruitment, lost big games, but battled back to win the national championship. His teammates love him, and he's gotten better every year. He says, so now I need to reconcile how he lasted till the 6th round. He says he should have a sizable chip on his shoulder and seems to have work ethic to get better, not unlike a young 6th round Tom Brady. Given that, I would like your take on these aspects of Will Howard. He says his accuracy got better with changes to his footwork, along with being coached by Chip Kelly at OSU. Quick turnaround for a guy just transferred there from K-State. However, his combine throwing session included lots of off-the-mark throws. It seemed to also get worse as this session went on. He says he does not possess elite arm strength, though it can be overcome with elite anticipation. Example, Tua and Breeze. How would you rate these? He had good talent to throw to. He says, though I would argue Joe Burrow had elite talent at LSU and went first overall. Both won national championships before entering the draft. Chip Kelly, as OC at OSU, didn't seem to be banging the table for the Raiders to draft him at any round. Should that be something to be concerned about? That's a good point. He digests offensive concepts and translates them onto the field, as seen on the quarterback school with John Gruden, and has been called a good communicator with a command of the huddle. He says, all that being said, who is Will Howard, and should we be unconcerned about getting Aaron Rodgers? Oh, First, Randy, you hit on a lot of great things there, and I think a lot of those things, potentially play into this, the sixth round. Look, I was surprised that you had a guy like Gabriel go before Will Howard. I was surprised that Will Howard lasted all the way to the sixth round. How much was quarterback need around the NFL getting past guys that you thought maybe could go in right away and start? Play into that arm strength and maybe overall accuracy is something that we've already talked about that potentially played a role in him slipping. I came away from all the interviews and the Gruden quarterback schools and all like that as being impressed with Will Howard. You hit on some great bullet points here about overcoming adversity and all like that. Long story short, let's end with the end of his email here, Alex. All that being said, who is Will Howard, and should we be unconcerned about getting Aaron Rodgers? I think the short answer to that is yes. Obviously, if you did not have Aaron Rodgers, you would expect, and you did not go out and get a Kirk Cousins, that Mason Rudolph would be your guy to start the season there. I think you just have to find out more about who Will Howard is this offseason. So I'm interested to see how Will Howard what he does the rest of this summer on into obviously training camp into preseason. But there are enough questions there to make you say, why indeed was he a 6th-round guy? Why did Chip Kelly, not go out there and try to pinch him earlier?
We don't know what Chip Kelly would have said behind closed doors. I'm sure teams called Ohio State and wanted to speak with the coaching staff, what happened at pro days. And so I don't know how many interviews Chip Kelly did, so I don't know if that would be a sign one way or another on his feelings about Will Howard. The dude won him a national title. I think he's probably pretty happy with how Will Howard did this year. When the readers said about, should we be unconcerned with Aaron Rodgers, my interpretation was, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but was, the Steelers don't need Aaron Rodgers because Will Howard can be the guy, and so screw Aaron Rodgers, focus on Howard because he can be the long-term future. That seemed to be the interpretation.
Right.
I mean, a short answer is you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can sign Aaron Rodgers and have him be your best option as a quarterback in 2025 while still evaluating Will Howard as a number 3 where there's no pressure. He's going to get reps in the summer, going to run some scout team, kind of ease into this thing, and you learn about him in the preseason. So, Will Howard, if he becomes anything, and hopefully he does, is a longer term play, a post 2025 play. And so Rodgers and Howard serve different roles and different purposes with different outlooks, short and long term. So I'm excited about Will Howard. Am I going to say he's going to be the guy, the savior? No, I'm going to just watch him, evaluate him, and go from there. I got a lot of pushback, Dave, the other day. I wrote, just even in passing in an article, that Howard is not guaranteed to make the 53. A lot of people said, Alex, you're wrong. He's going to make it. There's no way he doesn't make it. Is he guaranteed to make the 53, Dave?
I think he is, and shame on you. You got me more bullish on him, and I think the tape kind of speaks volumes on him. The deeper I got into him, circa past your video, in the middle of draft season and all like that, when I went back ahead of my final mock draft, I got time to look more at his stuff at Ohio State, and I saw a lot of things. I'll put it to you this way: I became more bullish on Will Howard as the draft season went on, and where I'm at right now is I'm very bullish on Will Howard, at least as a backup quarterback in the NFL. Where it goes from there, I think depends on opportunity, and obviously if he's able to develop in some of these key areas like accuracy and arm strength. I had to stop watching the John Gruden quarterback camp because I really got excited about him when watching that. I like the fact that he's already experienced, snap counts, and he seemed to dissect a lot of the defense stuff that Gruden flew at him on the fly. I've watched a couple of the other quarterback camps, and I thought Will Howard was the star out of the quarterback camps. I watched a little bit of the hey rookie stuff, and this guy from a mental aspect seems strong enough. He's got a lot of the things that you look for in potential franchise quarterbacks and all. So once again, I exit the draft process being bullish on Will Howard, at least to the degree of a comfortable NFL backup, and it's just going to depend on can he overcome some of these perceived deficiencies that he has coming out of college, and will he ever get an opportunity to really show some of those outside of preseason and training camp? So I think he's a lock to make the 53. I'll be surprised if
Really?
yeah, I think he's a lock, man. I really do, because I think they want to see what they have there, even if
Sure.
it ends up being them drafting a quarterback in the first round in 2026. I think there's enough there that they want to see if they could develop.
I'm going to get so much hate mail for this. Your inbox is going to be flooded by this. And again, listen, I was as high on Will Howard as just about anybody that I knew throughout a lot of the pre-draft
I'm
process.
surprised we're having this conversation. I really am.
I mean, I don't want to get this into a big semantics debate, but when I say guarantee, I mean 100% like written in stone. There's no possible way he doesn't make the 53. I think he's the favorite. Clearly, it'd be a disappointment if he doesn't. But if he has a bad preseason and he's a rookie and that happens, and Skylar Thompson plays well, and he could, because he's an experienced guy who's got several NFL starts, fourth year in the NFL, wouldn't be shocking for a fourth year guy to look better than a rookie. It's not the craziest thing where Howard gets cut and goes in the practice squad. I don't think that's the likely outcome. I'll put my money on Howard making the 53, but is any 6th-round pick a lock to make the 53? I would say no. He's got to earn that job. He's got to prove that he can take that job. He'll be battling a guy that's in a different place in his career that gives him an advantage over Will Howard, and Pittsburgh likes experience top to bottom on its depth chart. And so I just have a default answer of no one is in his position is a lock to make it, a guarantee to make it. I think he'll make it. I hope he makes it, but I'm not going to say he's etched in stone, write his name in pen. Doesn't matter what he does this summer. He's making the team.
This is not bet my house territory.
You just said he was a guarantee.
Well,
Didn't
I
you just say
mean,
that?
okay, virtually guaranteed. He's not bet my house, but I would bet your house on this.
Okay.
It's as close to me, and yeah, you're right. 6 rounders, yada yada. Look, were you surprised that Will Howard fell to the 6?
Yes,
Totally.
I was.
Would you have been surprised had he fell to the 5th? And let's say 5th is when he came off the board. You would have been pretty surprised still, right?
I thought he was an early day 3 pick. So maybe early 5th round wouldn't have been the most shocking thing, this divergence of where they're taking quarterbacks earlier, teams will wait on quarterbacks. I mean, he was still the 6th or 7th quarterback taken. So
right. And then
yeah,
how much did quarterback need around the league play into it? Yada yada. Quarterback class not overly great, top to bottom. All right, I will have Will Howard. I will need to see a lot of bad from Will Howard from your reporting in training camp and his preseason play for him not to be on my final 53-man roster.
And that's fair. And I think he'll make it. I hope he makes it. He was on my 53. He will be there until further notice. I just want to see the guy throw a pass before we sit there and say, well, he's a lock and he's this and he's that. I just want to watch him and evaluate him, because it won't be given, and it shouldn't be given. If, Pittsburgh probably in the past has given some guys some jobs and opportunities where it just felt like it was handed to them without competition. And he will get pushed by Skylar Thompson, who is a veteran who does have experience, who won't be as wide-eyed as Will Howard will be running the show in training camp. And Howard, I think, will impress and will have some good plays, but I just want to see him throw a pass and earn that spot, earn his keep before writing his name down in pen. That's all I'm saying.
I'm tired of the 6th and 7th round, especially you look back and look, you called it, 2 quarterbacks, Oladokin and all like that. And they didn't let that poor guy.
Right.
I mean,
get reps.
I mean, why did you even spend that pick on him if that was going to be the plan,
Well, because they knew they couldn't sign him as an undrafted free agent. But point taken, why even draft the guy if you knew he just was going to get squeezed out of reps?
Right. So, like I said, look, I'm not going to sit here and say this is the next Tom Brady or anything like that. I'm not that foolish. But I mean, give the man a summer and a full season, in limited even quarterback number 3 reps throughout the week in practice or whatnot. You owe it to yourself to at least keep him around a year, I think.
Let me just end on one positive thing on Will Howard. Try to placate to the people who probably are yelling at me right now in their
They think
vehicles.
they probably think you just blowing in the wind. Man, this is a guy that you pumped all summer long, and now you say there's no, you're not going, you think there's a good chance you might not make the roster.
Well, I didn't even say good chance. I just said he's just not a guarantee. That's my only commentary. Is to
Okay.
say he's not guaranteed. You can describe to whatever rung below. He's likely to make it. He's the favorite to make it. I just said he's not like literally guaranteed because no 6th round pick is. But to the reader's original point, what I really thought was impressive about Will Howard is all the adversity he's overcome, being that light recruit. As the reader said, he broke his arm his junior year of high school, missed the rest of the season, hurt him in the recruiting process. It's why there wasn't a lot of attention to him, why Penn State didn't offer, other schools didn't offer, why he went to Kansas State. Him dealing with the back and forth at Kansas State, playing, getting benched, getting thrown in there, struggling, taking his lumps. They come back, they win the Big 12 title late in his K-State career, going to Ohio State. You lose to Oregon on that slide that he had, lose to Michigan, didn't play well that day. You come back, you overcome, you win a national title. So I think he's a pretty battle-tested guy. And I think you have to be really mentally tough to, of course, play quarterback. And it's good to experience that adversity. So when you face it in the NFL, and everyone will face it in the NFL more than ever before, he's been there, done that, can draw on those experiences to overcome. And so I think that's really a good trait to have, is that he's gone through a lot of crap before. It's not been a perfect star-studded career where he was the guy and everyone loved him and there were no bumps in the road. And that's good. Those calluses make you stronger. And that's a good thing for Will Howard.
Is the arm strength the overall number one concern about this kid?
I think so. I mean, even to me, like, he was not an inaccurate quarterback. I'm not entirely sure where that narrative comes from. The combine was a poor showing, but I don't care about that. You're throwing with guys you never thrown with before. No one's going to remember about your combine performance 8 seconds after it happened. So to me, does not have the great arm is kind of the concern. And there has been some questions about him processing and reading defenses. I'm a little less concerned about that. I think he can do it. The issue is just the overall physical talent with his arm is not overwhelmingly good.
All right. I don't know how much hyperbole there was with John Gruden, but he said, "Why aren't you the first?" Look, I will stand on the fact that I was surprised that he did not go in the first 4 rounds. I thought he had shown enough, especially he should have been taken, in my opinion, ahead of Dylan Gabriel, for sure.
I guess it just makes more sense when you look at the draft as a whole, and almost all these quarterbacks went lower than expected. Shadur went lower, Milroe went lower than expected, Howard, obviously, et cetera. So a lot of guys did not go as early as people thought they would.
Look, if we get into training camp and you're saying, man, the ball's just not popping off, he's if the reports are just, bad coming out of that and preseason, I obviously can be swayed some off of that, but I'm going to remain bullish on Will Howard until I have more of a reason not to be.
And that's fair, but I also don't want to put this guy on such a pedestal that he
Sure.
can't live up to expectations. And you're not doing that, but the fan base is super excited about him, and they should be, and I'm excited too. But like, he is a rookie. He is going to make some mistakes, and that's okay. And it shouldn't be, his first interception. Oh, we were so wrong about this guy. We thought he was the savior. He sucks. You just take everything in moderation. Be excited. Be optimistic. Let's watch him. Let's evaluate. Take it in totality of the summer. There'll be good days. There'll be bad days. And go from there. That's my whole standpoint.
If he ends up being the backup quarterback in Pittsburgh for the next 4 or 5 years, I am totally on board with that, and I think it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I agree.
And then anything more that you get out of that, absolutely great, But am I putting off plans to try to sign Aaron Rodgers because of him? No.
Same. And I think that's where you get a little too overhyped on Will Howard. Oh, should they avoid the Aaron Rodgers pursuit? If you want to avoid the Rodgers pursuit, there are some valid reasons for that, but to me, they're not Will Howard related.
Right. Okay. All right. That email produced some conversation there. That's a good point to end on this time. Once again, we will not be back on Friday unless something provokes us to do so. And the only thing I can think of is an Aaron Rodgers signing or something like that. So, plan on us not having a show unless something breaks on the news wire or something like that. We'll be back on Monday. Within that, we'll try to keep people entertained on the site with content and all like that throughout the weekend. So, within all that, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex underscore Kozora. You can email the show with the terrible podcast at gmail.com to send your hate mail to Alex Kozora concerning Will Howard. If you'd like to donate to the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, follow the directions that way. So, look forward to getting back together with Alex on Monday. So, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.